Hey everybody, we're just going to be looking at the new fighter in the 2024 Player's Handbook as soon as they get started here.
The fighter, in addition to being one of the most popular classes in 5th edition D&D, is also one of the oldest classes. This is the person who essentially you can put any weapon in their hand and they know how to use it, and they know how to use it well. And if you look at the new Player's Handbook, the fighter and I think the ranger, they are sort of neck and neck in just the number of brand new features that they get in this book.
Right.
All the baseline goodies are still there: extra attack and it increasing, action surge, etc. This is just how much that is brand new in the fighter.
Right.
That is being joined with the features that the class had before. First off, of course, weapon mastery, brand new. Also, fighters now get a feature called Tactical Mind, which allows them to expend uses of their second wind when they fail an ability check to roll a die, add it to that check, and try to turn their failure into a success. Now, we were able to introduce this new feature because we also enhanced second wind so that fighters can now use it more often than they used to be able to.
Right.
And as fighters go up in level, their number of second wind uses increases, which means not only do they now have more uses to use on their self-healing, which is what second wind could do previously, but now they can also use it on Tactical Mind to try to turn, again, failed ability checks into successful ones.
I'm just going to pause it just for a sec to just point out that Jeremy Crawford says that the fighter got a lot of new stuff, and if you were following the playtest, you know that's true. Fighter got a lot of new stuff and enhancements to things they already had. You can have whatever opinion on weapon mastery you like. You should have seen all the rules as they're going to be official by now, because they were published on D&D Beyond yesterday. Not word for word, it just basically gave you a summary, but if you read it, you can tell that it's going to work the same as in the playtest. So if you download the playtest rules, you can see what weapon mastery does. I have some reservations about some of the decisions they made with weapon mastery, but as an overall concept, I love it because, I've been talking for years about how it would be nice if some of the Battle Master features were worked into the base fighter. And now they didn't do that. They kept the Battle Master as a separate subclass. But weapon masteries are kind of like Battle Master superiority maneuvers. They're less impactful, but they also don't require a resource to track. So they work with every attack. So just to give the fighter more flavor with the use of weapons, and a reason why they might choose to use a flail instead of a longsword, depending on what they want to achieve, I think they did a pretty good job overall with a weapon mastery as a way of making that differentiation. So overall, I'm still pretty happy with weapon mastery. I look at that saving throw on Topple, and I'm like, it's a lot of saving throws, but as a concept, I like it, and overall, more of it I like than dislike.
And that's very much on theme with fighters. Like, they persevere, and it may not just be to, heal up and get into the fight again. It may be to, you're trying to grasp for something, or you're trying to do this one thing with the last bit of strength in you.
Absolutely. And also, Tactical Mind is part of our effort to give the fighter also some special capability in situations that might not be combat. Most of the fighters' abilities are naturally combat-oriented. It's in the name. Yeah. They're all about fighting. But nonetheless, we, in every class, as we revisited it for the new Player's Handbook, made sure that every class had something that they could bring to the table also outside combat. And so Tactical Mind is a big option there. Again, at level 2. At level 5, they get Tactical Shift. Now, this allows them, whenever they use their second wind as a bonus action to regain hit points, to also move up to half their speed without provoking opportunity attacks. We wanted fighters, as the battlefield tacticians, to have a bit of an easier time moving around the battlefield, especially when they're in danger. And so that's why this is connected to second wind, that those times where the fighter is like, we want the fighter to be able to tactically reposition themselves, whether they need to do that to save themselves or move themselves into a better position to protect their allies, because some fighters are built as tanks, but then other fighters are built as archers, as skirmishers. Part of the beauty of the class is that you can build a fighter to fill many different tactical roles. Level 9, they get Tactical Master. You can see a theme here, since each of these new features has the word tactical in it. We have, Tactical Mind, Tactical Shift, and now Tactical Master. Tactical Master at level 9 lets the fighter, whenever they are using a weapon and are using that weapon's mastery property, lets them replace that property when they strike with the weapon with the push, sap, or slow mastery properties.
Okay, so I'm glad he's talking about this, because this is a change from the playtest that I have wanted to reveal, but I couldn't until now. So yes, at level 9, the fighter in the playtest had the ability, after a long rest, to change the weapon or the mastery property of a weapon that they had mastery of to another mastery that it qualified for. And that, I wasn't a huge fan of that. And I think a lot of people weren't a huge fan of that. And so what they've done is now they said, whenever you hit with a weapon, then you can decide to change the mastery property to one of these other masteries. I like that a lot more.
Which basically means the fighter always, once they reach level 9, always has those 3 mastery properties in their pocket.
Yeah.
And so whatever mastery property is on the weapon they're using, they always know, okay, if in a pinch I need one of those other 3 mastery properties, I can invoke it. And this is a replacement of a feature we experimented with in Unearthed Arcana that was allowing fighters to completely switch which mastery properties were on their weapons. We found that not only was that not super popular in the UA series, but it was also on the back end in our development creating a number of headaches for the system down the line. So that is no longer present. Instead, we felt both in our development and in our playtesting, it was far more preferable and fun to just give the fighter these 3 properties that the fighter could just say.
And I think it is more fun because if you think about it this way, essentially if you are using a weapon that has a mastery property other than those 3, your weapon essentially has 4 masteries, and you just choose which one to apply every single time you hit. And this has no limited uses. You can do it whenever you want. And even if you are using a weapon that's one of those 3, that's still 3 mastery properties that you can choose to apply which one you want to apply every single time you hit. You can hit the same enemy with the same attack action twice and apply 2 different masteries, which is really cool.
Say, nope, I'm going to use this one now, regardless of what the mastery property is on the weapon that I'm using.
I, again, being obsessed with the Battlemaster, all of those weapon mastery abilities for those weapons can stack and layer on to your battle maneuvers all at the same time.
Yes.
So there are some really juicy combinations. If you're a Battlemaster, you're using a maneuver, you can use an additional effect from that weapon. And now you have this massive toolbox of combinations that you've never had before.
Exactly. So the Battlemaster's mini game of deciding which maneuver to use at any point just became an even more intricate mini game because you're figuring out which maneuver to use paired with which weapon mastery.
If you want to stack, pushing an opponent a little bit with one of your maneuvers, and then also stacking the weapon mastery to push an opponent even further, you can get up to some really nasty business.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At level 13, the fighter gets a feature that I've actually been wanting to give fighters for years called studied attacks. And this gives the fighter advantage on their next attack roll against a target if they miss them. With this idea, again, of fighters being the battlefield masters, like they're sizing up their opponent.
Yeah.
And you can imagine it, the fighter more than anyone else of like, well, I missed you this time, but I just figured out something about you. And so I'm going to have a better chance of hitting you next time.
Right.
And you can see this sort of starting to snowball and can be a lot of fun.
And we saw that one in the playtest, and it's basically the same as it was in the playtest, and I think it's a good feature.
Fighters then at level 19 also get a new feature that all classes now get at level 19 that replaces the ability score improvement that they had at that level, and it is
Always gotta talk
the
about something
Epic
else I
Boon
wanted to talk
feature.
about.
And this is the feature that unlocks for fighters, as well as every other class who gets this feature, the ability to choose an Epic Boon feat. Now,
Okay, so yeah, there's a reveal. I didn't see that yesterday. I was kind of watching for it. But all classes now, in 2014 at level 19, you get a feat, an ability score increase or a feat. And then in the playtest, they had added later on that if you chose an ability score increase at level 19, you could increase your ability score above 20. That's gone now. Instead, at level 19, you're going to be able to choose your first Epic Boon feat. And the Epic Boon feats all include a +1 to an ability score. So you can still get your ability score above 20, but you're not going to increase your ability score modifier above +5 at level 19. But the Epic Boon feats are really good. So it gives you quite a bit of customization option for any character class when you get to level 19.
oh, the fighter, like everyone else, also has the option of choosing a non-Epic Boon feat at this level. It's just like when you
probably won't
choose,
do.
or rather, when you're given ability score improvement, you have the option of taking that or another feat. Same here with.
It's a trap, right? You don't want to take an ability score increase. You don't want to take a regular feat. You want to take Epic Boon feats because they are juicy.
Epic Boon. But I think you're going to want to choose the Epic Boon feat because the Epic Boon feats, they not only include an ability score increase in them, but that increase can go past the normal maximum of 20.
Yeah.
And they include abilities that really go beyond what feats can normally do. And there's a reason why these feats are not available until 19th level. Like one of them, just as an example, and it's particularly relevant to the fighter's interests, is one of the Epic Boon feats is called the Boon of Combat Prowess, which allows you, when you miss, to just decide you hit. And you can do this. You can do this only once per turn, but my goodness, is that good?
Yeah.
And the Epic Boon feats, there's another one where you now have true sight, meaning within a certain range, you can see anyone who's invisible.
What their actual form truly
Yes,
is.
you can see through illusions. Really powerful. We have another Epic Boon where when you take the attack action or the magic action, hey, you can also teleport. So you can see how these Epic Boons, once you reach level 19, can really supercharge how your character functions as they near the end of a normal D&D character's career.
So in regards to Epic Boon feats, I can't give you specifics beyond what he's already given you, but I can give you impressions. And basically, if you followed the playtests, you'll know that Epic Boon feats were introduced very early on, and they were very underwhelming at first. And I think they got some feedback that these Epic Boon feats don't feel very epic. So as the playtests went on, we saw better Epic Boon feats, like significantly juiced up ones. And when you get your player's handbook, if you do, you're going to find that the Epic Boon feats are juicy. They're not the underwhelming ones we saw early in the playtest. They're more the juicy, nice ones we saw later on.
Now, I put it that way because we also include rules in the new player's handbook that if your DM wants you to keep playing at level 20, you can go beyond the power that characters normally have once they sort of reach the ceiling or reach the level cap. Because now, every time you hit a certain amount of XP, you can pick another one of these epic boon feats, or another feat if you so choose. Meaning if you play at level 20 long enough, you could conceivably get one of your scores all the way up to 30. Meaning that at that point, you are truly god tier.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's awesome.
And again, that epic boon goodness is something that every character is going to have access to. Now with the fighter, I'm going to loop all the way back to the beginning before we dive into subclasses to touch also on some enhancements in existing features. I already mentioned that Second Wind now has more uses than it used to have.
Right.
But also the baseline fighting style feature that fighters get has been enhanced. And it's been enhanced in several ways. First off, there are new fighting style options that weren't present in 2014. There's now...
So I'm just going to tell you right now, yes, there are new fighting style options, but nothing you haven't seen before. You just didn't see it in the player's handbook.
blind fighting, interception, thrown weapon fighting, and unarmed fighting. Each of these made their debut in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and they've now graduated into the player's handbook, and they have been adjusted to now be fully at home with all of the other options in this book. We've also improved the protection option that was...
Yes, so protection was a terrible fighting style. Nobody took it, right? And once interception came out, there was really no reason to take protection because interception was just better at doing the same thing. But they have made a big improvement to protection that is going to give it its own niche. If you want to play a tank character, I'd be highly tempted to take the protection fighting style. I'm sure he's going to go into
present
details.
Before. And you can also, and this is a biggie, you can also now change the fighting style that you chose every time you gain a fighter level.
Okay, he's not telling you the details about protection. Just take my word for it. It's a whole lot better.
It used to be that you would choose it and
that was it.
That was it for the rest of your career. We've now given the fighter the ability every time they level up to change their mind. They might decide, I've been more of an archer than a frontline warrior, and so I want to change what fighting style feat I'm using.
And that's something I also enjoy about Weapon Mastery as well, is that you mentioned several times that you can go through training drills and adjust.
Yes.
Yeah, you can train up on a different weapon and a different,
And that is a key piece of the fighter's weapon mastery feature. And the other weapon mastery features is exactly that. Yeah, that you pick the weapons that you unlock, but then you can change them.
Yeah.
And this is all about us giving players more ways to explore different parts of the game and not feel that they make a choice and they're stuck with it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Now, there are certain choices that, they're for the character's life, unless something extraordinarily magical alters something. Like, for instance, most characters' species will never change, although, they might be reincarnated, and that could certainly change their species. Similarly, most characters never change their class, although they might delve into another class via multiclassing. But within some of these big choices that usually remain true throughout a character's career, we've looked for ways to give people more avenues to explore different options in the game. In a way, the fighter, to me, finally is truly the sort of weapon master equivalent of the wizard in terms of flexibility.
Absolutely, yeah.
The wizard, who is not actually our biggest damage dealer when it comes to spells.
I can't agree with him there. There's just not as much flexibility under weapons, even with weapon mastery, even if you are playing a battle master, as there are with spells. And of course, there's more spells in the player's handbook now than ever before.
But the wizard has the most versatility when it comes to spells.
Yeah.
And fighters now have that kind of versatility with weapon use,
Not that kind of
with
versatility.
tactical options. But we've also made it so that you get to determine how deeply you go into the amount of choice, because that's a big part of your subclass decision. And the 4 subclasses that are in the fighter represent not only 4 different thematic directions that a fighter can go in, but they...
Now, he seems to be done talking about the base fighter, and he didn't mention something that's big, that is a huge improvement to the fighter that was in the playtests. And I guess I can't tell you the specifics, but you should probably be able to guess what it is. If you look at any of my videos where I covered the playtest, there was a fighter feature I was very excited about that is still there, and I don't know why he didn't talk about it.
They also represent different levels of complexity, and in some ways, different levels of sort of mechanical idiosyncrasy. And this is something that we will return to when we talk about the other classes, because when we look at the classes, rather the subclasses that each class gets, and when we were choosing the 4 subclasses for every class in the new player's handbook, we were always looking for different levels of complexity, and then also different levels of idiosyncrasy, because we wanted to make sure that each subclass represented a different play style, a different theme, and a different level of complexity.
Let's delve into the subclasses. Fighter Battlemaster is one of my absolute favorites. They have a complexity to them that makes you feel like kind of a wizard.
And that is an identity.
So the subclasses for fighter you're going to see in the player's handbook are the Battlemaster, the Champion, the Eldritch Knight, and the Psi Warrior. And if you are familiar with the current version of each of those, the one that got the least changes is the Psi Warrior. It's very, very similar to what you saw in Tasha's. There's one change that I think is going to give you an incentive to stay just fighter rather than multi-class out, but that's about it. Then Eldritch Knight, if you read the playtest, you saw some big changes for Eldritch Knight. I'll tell you that they pretty much went through. And if you saw the Battlemaster in the playtest, you probably saw some pretty dramatic changes, and they pretty much went through. And if you saw the Champion, not my favorite subclass, still not going to be my favorite subclass. He talks about different complexities. Champion is the lowest complexity, but it had some big enhancements in the playtest, and pretty much went through. So just letting you know that.
That we have protected in the revised Battlemaster. There was actually an early version of the revised fighter where and I know actually there are many 5e fans who expected us to do this.
Right.
We considered taking the Battlemaster and turning its maneuver system into the baseline for the whole class.
Right.
And we actually spent...
So I've already talked about that. I'm assuming he's going to say we chose weapon mastery instead of
quite a bit of time several years ago, assuming that was the direction we were going in with the fighter. We, as you can see, backed away from that.
Yeah.
And the main reason we did so is we realized that would undermine our goal of providing different levels of complexity for people and different play styles within the fighter. Because even though there are a segment of fans, you included, who love the Battlemaster, there are also many fighter players who have no interest in playing the Battlemaster or having this whole array of maneuvers
Yeah.
to manage. In many ways, I'm glad for the Battle Master's sake that we did not absorb it into the base class, because it allowed us to protect the Battle Master as the Battle Master. So a big part of bringing the Battle Master into the new PH was making sure that the maneuvers were all functioning as well as they could, not only in the context of the fighter and the Battle Master, but also in the context of other revisions we'd done in the game. But then we also added in new maneuvers. So if people thought there were a lot before, well, there are even more.
I should mention also there is one maneuver that I think it's in Tasha's that didn't make it. So you're going to have more maneuvers to select from than you did with the previous player's handbook. But there is one current maneuver for the Battle Master that is not in the new player's handbook. Obviously, I can't tell you what it is unless he mentions. But other than niche builds, I didn't see that maneuver very often.
Yeah.
Because now you have ambush, bait and switch, commanding presence, and tactical assessment. These maneuver options debuted in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and we have brought them over now.
All right, I'm going to quickly check to see if that maneuver is in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, because then I think I can safely let you know what it is. So let's go to Tasha's Battle Masters. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Maneuver options. Okay, yeah, here it is. So quick toss didn't make it. So there won't be a quick toss in the new player's handbook.
Now to the player's handbook to join the other options within the Battle Master.
And again, I always liked commanding presence because this...
I'm going to add, actually, as for quick toss, I always saw it with a very specific kind of build, and it won't work with the way that the net has changed in the new player's handbook.
Again, fleshed out, even though you are primarily, maybe you could be a ranged or melee character, you have additional social options.
Exactly.
And that makes sense for that character. Like it fleshes out the character experience that you're having.
That non-combat angle is also a part of some other tweaks we made inside the Battle Master. So in the Student of War feature, it used to be you got just a tool proficiency. Well, we now also allow you to get another skill proficiency from the fighter's skill list, because we wanted the Battle Master to feel more well-rounded. And because we imagine the Battle Master as this sort of chess-playing tactical master who, yes, it's in the name, they are a master of battle, but also cunning and clever. And so that's why we added in that additional skill proficiency. We also completely redesigned the Battle Master's Know Your Enemy feature.
Okay.
We wanted it to have clearer use in battle.
Yeah, and so Know Your Enemy in the 2014 Player's Handbook, I think it suffers from maybe being designed before they had fully fleshed out how NPCs were going to work, because it talks about things about like learning the fighter level of somebody you study, but of course NPCs usually aren't going to have fighter levels. They're, if you're looking at, any of the NPC stat blocks, they don't have levels. And it talks about knowing an overall character level, same thing. And it all required a minute of study, which meant that, if you're in any kind of combat situation, you probably weren't going to be able to do it unless you had a chance to look beforehand. Just what they have now is just so much cleaner.
And so now, when you use it, and you have a limited number of uses per day, but when you use it, you are able to discern a creature's immunities, resistances, and vulnerabilities. Essentially, it's in the name, you know your enemy. You size them up, and you're able to figure out the types of damage that's going to do nothing to them, but then also you're going to discern their weaknesses.
Perfect.
So the champion has still the same core identity as before, having a greater chance of scoring critical hits than pretty much anyone else in the game. But we really wanted to bring a bit more oomph to the subclass, so that it would not only continue to be fun for the people who love its more streamlined playstyle, but also so that it might appeal to even those of us who often like a bunch of tactical options, which is one of the reasons why in our playtests I spent so much time myself playing a champion, because I wanted the champion to be at a place where I myself can say, I had a great time playing it.
Right.
And I can say that wholeheartedly, that I had some of my most fun in the last year and a half in our playtesting playing a champion fighter. So weapon mastery with the champion is really like wonderful spice added to a tight, streamlined base. Again, we still wanted to make sure that the champion retained its streamlined nature while getting a little more spice of its own, not relying entirely on weapon mastery to bring that spice, but to get some of its own. And so with that in mind, we redesigned the Remarkable Athlete feature, and it now does a couple of things. First, combining with the champion's greater chance of scoring critical hits, Remarkable Athlete has made it so that whenever the champion scores a critical hit, the champion can move a certain distance without provoking opportunity attacks. So this allows the champion perhaps to score a crit and fell a target, and then without having to use any of their regular move, start making their way toward their next target.
Right.
Or move to another tactically advantageous position on the battlefield. We've also made it so that Remarkable Athlete gives the champion advantage on strength athletics checks, but even better on initiative rolls. Because
now, Remarkable Athlete gave a bonus to initiative rolls previously. The biggest difference, honestly, is that you're going to get it much, much earlier now. You get it at level 3, and I think it was level 9 before. So that's a big gap. But before, it was half your proficiency bonus to initiative rolls, and all dexterity, strength, and constitution ability checks where you weren't already adding proficiency. Kind of like the bard, jack of all trades, but only for physical ability checks. And two problems with that. First, the bonus was very small. And second, it was not intuitive. A lot of people didn't know they got that bonus. So now just saying you get advantage on initiative, I just think it's better.
We view the champion as being this person who is relentlessly pursuing victory, and they are ready to fight. And there are only a few characters in the player's handbook who have this, once they reach a certain level, an always-on advantage on initiative. And the champion is one, the assassin is another, and the rogue, and then the barbarian class all up eventually gets it. This ability is not only fantastic on its own, because it simply means you have a better chance of acting first, or at least sooner, in any battle that you're participating in, but it has an especially nice interaction with how surprise now works. Because the surprise rules in...
Oh, I'm excited. Is he going to reveal that it changes? Surprise has changed a lot. It's so simplified. Let's see. I hope he says what it is.
Handbook have been changed. Rather than there being a potential for certain combatants to simply be unable to act during the first round of a fight, a possibility that frankly ended up really unbalancing the game in certain circumstances, because the old surprise rules could very easily trivialize an entire encounter, and often way more so than they were intended to. It was really supposed to be sort of a narrative thing of, oh, look, you got the jump on somebody, but causing another side to essentially spend the entire first round of a combat gawking would often mean, in some cases, why are we even having the fight? Like, the DM can just say, you won.
Yeah.
And so we wanted there still to be the possibility of feeling like you have an edge, but we needed to defang how powerful surprise was. And so in the new rules, being surprised simply means you have disadvantage on your initiative roll.
And that's it. Yeah, if you are surprised, you have disadvantage on initiative. Done and done. I like that way more. I agree with him wholeheartedly that surprise had way too much impact before. And, once there was surprise, especially if the PCs got surprise on an enemy, it really was just, why bother running this combat where the players just go and then they're going to go again and all the enemies are now dead and they never got an action, and why did we go through this? Disadvantage on initiative, it gives you an edge. It's worth getting, but it is not going to, have that dramatic impact on the difficulty of a fight. Because, if you build your characters for initiative, there's a good chance you're winning initiative anyways. Disadvantage on initiative, I like it. And, a lot of people were kind of concerned about the assassin losing out on auto crits against surprised enemies, and just be aware, if you were to run a 2014 version of the assassin subclass, which supposedly technically you can do, you will never ever get that, because there's no such thing as a surprised enemy after initiative anymore. So just be aware of that.
Meaning you are likely to go after the people who surprised you, although it's not guaranteed. The reason why I'm bringing this up in relation to the champion is it means, because the champion always has advantage on their initiative rolls, even if they're surprised,
Right, yeah.
they still don't have disadvantage. It just means their advantage is canceled by the disadvantage. Meaning the champion, the assassin, and the barbarian are really hard to surprise, which is exactly what we want. We want these characters to
always be ready.
They are ready.
Yeah.
They are ready to fight.
Yeah.
Or in the case of the assassin, they're ready to get you.
Yeah. They don't want this. They don't want to fight. They want to end the fight.
Yeah. The assassin wants the fight to end before it even starts.
It's already over. Yeah.
So there's some other enhancements in the champion. The additional fighting style feature that used to be at level 10 has moved down to level 7.
I enjoy how they blurred all the text here. And this screenshot has been out before, and my patrons have gone through it, and they have decoded the entire thing word for word.
And then at level 10, there's now a brand new feature. It's called Heroic Warrior. And every time the champion starts their turn in combat and doesn't have heroic inspiration, they get it automatically.
Oh, wow.
And remember, the new heroic inspiration lets you re-roll any die roll. So the champion could use this to re-roll their d20 roll in the hope of fishing for crits, but they could also use it to re-roll a damage die or some other die that they're using on their turn. What this means is that a champion,
And I just thought about this morning, but I was thinking about heroic inspiration working on any roll in the game, and if you roll for hit points, you might want to have heroic inspiration when you do that, because that's a pretty impactful die roll that's going to have long-lasting impact. Being able to re-roll that would be pretty good.
Every turn in combat has a re-roll in their pocket, which, again, simple,
Yeah.
but potentially very effective. Finally, Their level 18 feature, Survivor, now in addition to its other functions that it had before, also gives the champion advantage on death saving throws, and they essentially gain their expanded crit range that they have on attack rolls also on death saves. And here's what I mean by that. Now, when they're making death saving throws, if they roll an 18, 19, or 20 when they have this Survivor feature, they gain the benefit of having rolled a 20. They basically, they can roll a critical death saving throw with a bigger range, since that's also their theme with their attack rolls, meaning it is really hard to keep a champion down.
And what does a critical death saving throw do?
So when you roll a 20 on a death saving throw, you gain a hit point, which means you stop dying.
Yeah.
So that's the best thing that can happen to you, because that erases all of the death saving throw failures you might have accrued up to that point, and then you have the potential to get back into the fight.
Lots of people want to play a fighter, a lot of people want to play a wizard, but there's always been something like, I want a little bit of magic with me having a sword, having a longbow, just a little touch of magic, and that's what the Eldritch Knight gives you.
Yeah, and the Eldritch Knight is tapping into that exactly.
And I mentioned this before, but if you read the playtest and you saw the latest version of the Eldritch Knight, what you can get in the Player's Handbook is very much like
meant
that.
To be not only there for the person who wants the fighter mage, but maybe even for somebody who played original D&D where elf was a class option that mixed spellcasting and martial ability. And that is exactly what the Eldritch Knight is. The Eldritch Knight retains, its core abilities from 2014, the spellcasting combined with the abilities of the fighter. And the Eldritch Knight in the quartet of classes, rather subclasses in the fighter, is the first of two, the other one being the Psi Warrior, that are for people who want the fighter mixed with something else.
Yeah.
So the champion and the battle master, they represent sort of the core fighter, but at different ends of the complexity spectrum. The Eldritch Knight and the Psi Warrior, they're instead on a different axis. They're about taking the core shtick of the fighter and combining it with, in the case of the Eldritch Knight, spellcasting, and in the case of the Psi Warrior, psionic power. And they give you two very different routes to follow, also mechanically, because the Eldritch Knight relies on spells mechanically, while the Psi Warrior relies on psionic energy dice and using unique abilities that are built into the Psi Warrior subclass. Now, in the Eldritch Knight, we've made several enhancements to take this popular subclass and make it even better. So one of the things that people will notice right away if they've played the Eldritch Knight before is we no longer have any School of Magic restrictions in the Eldritch Knight. The Eldritch Knight, as well as the Rogue's Arcane Trickster subclass, used to have School of Magic restrictions in them when it came to your spell selection, and we have removed the restrictions from both of those subclasses because we wanted you to have more freedom.
And in the playtest, if I recall correctly, they did kind of this wishy-washy thing. Maybe this was just the Arcane Trickster, I don't remember. But where you had to start with the restricted spell schools and then you could switch out those spells later for non-restricted. They've gotten rid of that. It's just pick your wizard spells. And I think that's the way to go.
To build the type of warrior mage you wanted to build with the Eldritch Knight, or in the case of the Arcane Trickster, the type of rogue mage that you wanted to create. The Eldritch Knight also is helpful for the person who maybe does not want to dive into multi-classing, but again, wants a little bit of the chocolate mixed with their peanut butter.
Right.
That is the warrior mage. Now, in addition to that, we've also given the Eldritch Knight the ability to use an arcane focus, a a detail that was missing in 2014. And then we've redesigned both War Magic and Improved War Magic. Previously, War Magic relied on you taking a bonus action to gain its benefit. Instead, you can now, with War Magic, take the attack action and replace one of your attacks with casting a cantrip.
And so, obviously, that's the same as the Bladesinger, right? The Bladesinger gets extra attack where they can replace one attack with a cantrip. But there's a big difference here, and that is that Fighter's extra attack scales, and Bladesinger extra attack doesn't scale, and they do not combine. But this does combine with Fighter extra attack. So when you get to level 11, for example, you will have the improved extra attack where you're attacking 3 times with your attack action. You can still replace one of those with a cantrip and then make 2 weapon attacks.
And then Improved War Magic, which also now does not rely on a bonus action, now lets you, when you take the attack action, replace 2 of your attacks to cast a level 1 or level 2 spell. So what this does is even better integrate the 2 parts of the Eldritch Knight's identity, their fighterliness and their spellcasting abilities, by taking the spellcasting abilities and really allowing them to take advantage of one of the fighter's main features relative to anyone else in the game, and that is simply the number of attacks that fighters get. Because fighters, with their extra attack feature, gain more attacks than anyone else in the game. The one
And yeah, so their Improved War Magic, I mean, it should probably already occur to you that, so you give up 2 attacks to cast a leveled spell, level 1 or 2 spell. You give up 1 attack to do a cantrip. Well, if you have 3 attacks or even 4 attacks, then obviously you can do both of those with the same attack action. And yep, that is completely allowed under the new Player's Handbook.
An exception being the monk. The monk does not get all their extra attacks through extra attack. Instead, it's through various unarmed strike shenanigans with their bonus action. And of course, it's the good kind of shenanigans. So this allows, in the Eldritch Knight, the ability for the fighter to integrate their spellcasting into the regular attack routine and then frees up their bonus action for other uses. So that it isn't being devoured by their subclass's main shtick.
That's what's new with Eldritch Knight. Let's talk about the Psi Warrior.
So the Psi Warrior first appeared in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and is a way for you to take the fighter foundation and add to it this character who manipulates the battlefield with the powers of their mind. And this includes various telekinetic abilities, being able to hurl things around with your mind, as well as defensive capabilities, all of which is...
I generally think of the Psi Warrior as if you want your fighter to be a Jedi Knight, then Psi Warrior is your choice.
Handled by using psionic energy dice that represent your character's psionic energy. And the subclass, for anyone who has played it before, will feel very similar. And the main changes that we've made to it in integrating it into the new Player's Handbook has largely been to just reword things, reframe some things so that it fits naturally in the context of the new rulebook and in the context of the broader.
Yeah, so with the Psi Warrior, I only noticed like one real change to how things work. Like I said, it was just a change that gives you incentive to stick with fighter. That's it.
Fighter class.
So you've given the fighter a lot of new things.
Yes.
Some dramatic improvements and changes, and a lot more to do. That's fantastic. The new Player's Handbook is available for...
All right, so that's the end of the video. Yeah, just to sum up, what I'll say is the fighter got some big improvements. Not stuff we didn't see already in the playtest. For the, it's almost all stuff we saw in the playtest, except for the big improvement to the level 9 feature, which was, what did he say, improved tactical something or other, where essentially your weapon can have up to 4 masteries at the same time, then you just pick which one to use each time you hit, which I think is great. And he didn't talk about improvements to another feature. I don't know why he didn't bother to mention that, because it's a big change and a big improvement. I think fighters did well. Of course, people are going to ask me, is there still going to be a martial caster divide in, the, what do they call it, 5.24? Is that what we're calling it now? And my answer to that is yes. Yes, there still will be a martial caster divide. Spells are powerful. But I do think it has been narrowed. So, if you thought the martial caster divide was too big, good news, it won't be as big anymore. If you thought that the martial caster divide needed to be eliminated, bad news, you're not going to get that. But you will see that classes like the Barbarian and the Fighter, they just got bigger improvements than classes like the Wizard. They just did. We've just seen a lot of them right now. So, hope you enjoyed that reaction, and we got to talk about more than just the Fighter. I've been hoping to have a chance to actually talk about the changes to Surprise, because that's a big change, and I think a big improvement, something I really liked. It was one of the first things I looked for, because I had predicted, the prediction I had made is that you would get advantage on initiative. It turns out the enemy gets disadvantage on initiative. Pretty darn close. I think I was pretty close on that one. So hope you enjoyed that. I'll be back again tomorrow, because they're going to be doing another class tomorrow, and I'm going to continue to do reactions for you guys. And hopefully they reveal more new rules as well. So we'll talk to you then.